Viktor Frankl stands in darkness, a prisoner in a Nazi concentration camp. He is weak, starving, and surrounded by the ashes of despair. Yet something still glimmers in his mind that the guards cannot take away: his search for meaning. This is his story, how a Viennese psychiatrist endured unimaginable horrors and discovered a guiding truth about life. In the bitter dawn, Viktor opens his eyes to a world of barbed wire and mud. A frigid wind bites at his face as he rises from the plank bunk, his body trembling. Around him, fellow inmates lie still, too weak to stir. The creaking of wooden bunks and the heavy stench of smoke fill the air. He pushes out from under his blanket, the coarse fabric scratching his skin. Overhead, guard towers loom, silent and watchful. In front of him, long shadows of prisoners shuffle toward the morning roll call. Viktor forces himself to stand. He remembers a different morning, a snowy day in Vienna only a few years before. At that time, he was a young doctor, full of hope and energy. He had a small apartment and a fiancée who waited for him after his rounds. He talked often about the future, a medical book he would write, a family he would start. He once gave a lecture about what he called the will to meaning, the idea that life's purpose is more important than simple pleasure or power, but all that is distant memory. Now the acid smell of cabbage soup and the barked orders of the guards are reality. Viktor is stripped of his dignity. A guard shaves his head and forces him into striped clothes that hang loosely on his gaunt frame. He is no longer Viktor Frankl, the respected psychiatrist. He is just a number being processed through hell. The numbers tattooed on their arms make each man feel as if his name has been erased forever. Yet Viktor clings to a small promise he made to himself. One day, he will be free again and see his loved ones. Each night, in the darkness of the bunk room, he whispers his fiancée's name like a prayer. Someday, he vows silently, they will hear me in the morning. That tiny flicker of hope is enough to keep him breathing. For Viktor's first months in the camp are a nightmare of shock and numbness. The air is cold and damp. He spends hours marching from one end of the compound to the other for roll call under a gray sky. Frozen mud sticks to his boots. Each step feels like moving through the weight of this nightmare. His stomach pangs with hunger, but he pushes it aside. Instead, his mind flickers over the grim tasks that keep him alive. Waking up for roll call, marching to labor, collapsing at night on a hard plank. Sometimes Viktor's mind goes blank. He struggles to grasp reality. At first, he tries to understand what has happened, but soon he shuts his feelings off just to survive. A few nights, he dreams of Vienna. Sunlight on garden paths, his mother's gentle voice calling him home for dinner, his fiancée's bright laughter in their apartment. Then he wakes sweating and disoriented, remembering the barbed wire fence and the guard towers. Each memory of home feels like a painful yearning now. Asterisk, during the day, Viktor works alongside fellow prisoners. Some men share the same fate. A former baker with scrawny arms, a piano teacher whose fingers once brought music to life, a scholarly professor with kind eyes. They do prisoner labor, hauling stone or chopping wood under watchful eyes. The camp guards trust no one. The slightest slip or complaint is met with a rifle, but worse. Viktor learns quickly that to survive, he must obey without question. But in obeying, his mind still races, holding on to a secret inner rebellion. In these early days, Viktor notices that almost everything feels unreal. This shock phase, as he would later call it. The sudden cruelty, the emptiness, the fear of death in the gas chambers, it all feels like a nightmare he cannot wake from. Fellow inmates sometimes whisper quietly of suicide, and Viktor listens from a dark corner. He wonders if they might be right, if this truly is hell on earth. But Viktor cannot succumb to despair. In the barracks, lying on the wooden plank bunk, Viktor begins a tiny ritual to stay sane. He closes his eyes and breathes in the cold air, forcing himself to remain calm. He repeats one mantra like a prayer. Tomorrow, the very next day, one day at a time. He tells himself that no matter how terrible today is, the sun will rise again, or something in his mind will carry him through to the morning. A few weeks pass, and Viktor slips into a second, darker phase of his inner journey. The fear gives way to numbness. His body grows thin, his cheeks hollow. He stops crying when others are beaten. He barely registers hunger or cold. This is apathy setting in, an emotional death that guards a tiny spark of life. He barely feels anything anymore, just enough to conserve strength. Asterisk, yet in this numbness, small sparks of humanity still flicker. One dawn, Viktor sees the sun rising a pale orange above the fence. In that moment of beauty, something in him stirs. It is a tiny bird, a sparrow, perched on a nearby post. The bird flutters its wings as if trying to shake off the frost. Viktor watches it for a long heartbeat. In the hush of morning, he imagines the bird's song, sweet and impossible here, and for a moment, his mind is quiet. The sight reminds him, life outside this misery still holds something beautiful, that other moments of grace come unexpectedly. A fellow prisoner, Karel, shares half of his meager bread ration with Viktor on a bitter day. Viktor hears the distant cry of a child from a nearby village and feels a fierce longing for his own lost childhood. He sees a sunset tint the smoky sky with pink, and it brings tears of gratitude even as the air stings his eyes. These tiny scenes do not end his suffering. They make it sharper, but they remind him that something is worth living for, even here. Even here. Slowly, as Viktor adapts, a profound realization takes root in him. Even in this inhuman place, there is one thing the Nazis cannot touch, his inner choice. He is free, at any moment, to choose his attitude. They can take his clothes, his food, even his life, but they cannot take the way he sees this experience. He remembers what he once told his students. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Some days, Viktor chooses defiance. He whispers curses at the guards under his breath. He refuses to let his eyes drop in submission. In the endless line of faces around him, he silently declares, "I will not give you what you want." On other days, he chooses acceptance. When his back bleeds from forced labor or his body aches uncontrollably, he quietly tells himself this pain is not forever. In between, he alternates, sometimes angry, sometimes resigned, but he always believes this too will pass. Viktor holds on to purpose wherever he can find it. At night, he sometimes recites an entire lecture in his mind, a lesson he will give when he is free. He paces the barracks, imagining walking into a university classroom again. He envisions the warmth of autumn grass under his feet, the thrill of an insightful question from a student, the smile of his fiancée in the audience. In those daydreams, Viktor feels sunlight on his face and knows that this moment will come. These imagined scenes of normal life shield him from total despair. By drawing on his training as a psychiatrist, Viktor also tries to help others in the camp. Fellow prisoners seem drawn to him, sensing something different in the way he carries himself. At night, men like an engineer or a young mother find his ear and share their pain in whispers. To a hungry, shivering mother, Viktor softly says, "Think of your child at home. Her laughter waits for you. Live for that day." To Hans, the teacher whose hands have gone weak, Viktor recalls, "In your classroom, standing at the chalkboard, you felt alive and important. Hold on to that feeling." In each broken voice, Viktor hears pieces of his former life giving him strength, and he shares that strength with others. Even as he helps others, Viktor feels moments of despair himself. He watches, helpless, as friends he cares about falter. One brutally cold dawn, a prisoner named Otto collapses. Otto had been Viktor's friend in the camp, a gentle soul who once played the violin by firelight. Viktor had seen Otto cradle a scrap of bread in his hands as if it were a treasure for his mother's memory. Now the relentless cruelty of the camp has shattered Otto's spirit. Viktor finds Otto sitting in a corner, rocking back and forth, whispering, "I'm done. I'm so done." Viktor grabs Otto's shoulders and tries to lift him up. "No," Otto pleads. "I just want to sleep." Viktor's heart rips open. There is another man here, in the darkness of that barracks, who is ready to die. Viktor holds Otto's hand for a long, agonized moment, realizing that he cannot save everyone. When Otto finally slumps back onto the bunk, Viktor knows that a piece of him goes with his friend. In Otto's eyes, he sees the abyss of giving up, and he vows silently, "I will not go there." Time passes, and Viktor's own body shows its rebellion. He catches typhus, as many do. His ribs burn, muscles ache as if crushed by grief, and high fevers drag him into hallucinations. In delirium, he imagines hearing his beloved wife's voice calling him from afar, or feeling her hand gently pressing against his fevered forehead. Guards haul Viktor to the makeshift infirmary, a wooden shack where the dying lie side by side with the living. Viktor drifts on the threshold between two worlds in one fever dream. He is walking through the streets of Vienna at night, the warm lamps of old cafes leaking through mist. In another, he is home in bed, the spring sunlight of his bedroom window baking his face. He wakes at last in the dry morning. He is alive, truly alive. His skeletal body trembles with relief, and tears carve dirty paths down his cheeks. He loved life in that moment, even as his heart ached for the friends who did not survive to share it. In the last winter of the war. As the snow still cracks underfoot, the tables of fate suddenly turn. Soldiers wearing unfamiliar uniforms crash through the camp gates. Guns fire in the air. Confusion reigns. Viktor is still too weak to run, but as the guards vanish, he watches in stunned silence. A white-clad medic kneels beside him and presses food into his hands. Viktor tastes bread and water. He tastes freedom in each bite. For a moment, he simply kneels in the snow and laughs, a sound lost in the vast sky. He realizes he is alive. The days after liberation are disorienting. Viktor and the other survivors wander through devastated cities, searching for any sign of normal life. Buildings stand half-ruined around him. The streets are quiet except for broken voices telling war stories. Each friendly face they encounter, an allied soldier offering relief, a stranger sharing a blanket, tears at Viktor's heart. His life outside the camp is reduced to scattered fragments, each aching with absence. In liberated Vienna, Viktor searches desperately for survivors. Finally, a letter arrives. His wife has died weeks ago of typhus in another camp. Suddenly, the personal losses he carried alone become unbearable. He has no home to return to, no one waiting at his door. For a time, Viktor weeps alone in empty streets and ruined rooms. But from this darkest grief, he draws a new resolve. He whispers to the empty city, "Their suffering will not be in vain. Their love remains with me, and so will I live, for all of us," he promises. He realizes that even the pain of his losses can serve a purpose, to live fully for the sake of those who cannot, and to teach others what he has learned. Viktor digs through the rubble of his life. The apartment where he once lived is gone, but hidden in an army supply car is a thin notebook he managed to keep. He pulls it out with trembling hands. Its pages are warped by damp and soot, but the ink remains. Inside are quotations from philosophers, notes for a book he planned to write, and the beginnings of ideas about meaning. He carefully reads the words he himself scrawled earlier. Even in the worst of circumstances, life has potential meaning. A single tear falls onto the paper. Writing to remember everything now feels sacred. With quiet determination, Viktor begins to rebuild his life and the central ideas that will become logotherapy, therapy of meaning. He knows that every person must discover his own purpose. There is no single answer that fits everyone. He teaches that human beings are not just machines governed by instinct or power. Unlike Sigmund Freud, Viktor believes our chief drive is not pleasure. And unlike Adler, he believes it's not the pursuit of superiority. Instead, our strongest motivation is the will to meaning, the search for something to live for. In lecture halls now, Viktor recounts his experiences and the philosophy he's discovered. He tells his students, what man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for some goal worthy of him. He explains that meaning can be found in three main ways. The first is through creating or accomplishing something, doing a deed, building a work, making something beautiful or useful. A man can find meaning in what he gives to the world, he says, even if it starts with a single kind word. He'll describe a fellow survivor who became a doctor not for fame or wealth, but as a mission to heal others, and in that service he found his purpose. The second source of meaning is in experiencing something or someone. Viktor's own story shows this vividly. The love he felt for his wife and parents sustained him when all else was stripped away. He speaks passionately about love, how the memory of his wife's smile or the innocence of a child's laugh became his anchors in the camp. He insists that love is the ultimate and highest goal to which one can aspire. He might say, what is to give light must endure burning. He reminds his audience that even a prisoner's simple gaze on a sunrise or the memory of a loved one's voice can create a moment of grace. The third path to meaning is the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. Viktor is careful here. He does not encourage seeking suffering for its own sake, but he teaches that if pain comes, we have the power to turn it into achievement. He uses a simple image: two men carrying heavy stones. One man drops to his knees under the weight, despairing. The other keeps walking, each step lightening the burden by an act of will. In this way, Viktor teaches, we make suffering bearable by the story we tell ourselves about it. We can say to ourselves, this is my test, and I will pass it. He recalls his own inner dialogue in the camp when he was starving and freezing. He refused to let despair have the final word. For Viktor, every trial offered a chance to show courage or compassion. He once said that guilt can motivate us to live new lives differently, and even facing death can let us look back with a sense of fulfillment for the life we lived. Viktor's logotherapy also addresses what he calls the existential vacuum, the inner emptiness many people feel when life seems meaningless. He explains that a hollow, aimless feeling or a creeping boredom is a sign that one's life lacks purpose. Modern society, he believes, leads many to this vacancy of meaning. To fill this emptiness, he urges each person to find a responsibility or mission to commit to, even something small. He sometimes uses a vivid metaphor to drive the point home. Life is like a marathon on a rocky road, and he is the runner. He tells his students, I cannot run that road for you. Each must find why he is running. But once you find your reason, you will find the strength to take another step. He even assigns an exercise. Imagine today is your last day alive. Write the speech you would give. You will see, people rarely mention their own happiness. Instead, they mention their family or a cause they care about. In these exercises, most discover that meaning lies in something beyond oneself. Throughout all his teachings, one principle shines like a beacon: freedom of inner choice. He repeatedly reminds people that even when everything is taken away, the power to choose one's attitude remains. He illustrates it by recalling moments in the camp when men had nothing left but their next step or their next breath. And even then, they were free in how they faced reality. He often quotes, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." This is the heart of Viktor's message. The final freedom cannot be chained. Viktor's own life becomes the living example of what he teaches. He returns to the classroom and to writing, carrying with him the scars of the camps, but also an unbreakable spirit. He sometimes closes his lecture by asking students to imagine the scene, a man in the deepest darkness of a concentration camp, and how he steps out again into the sunlight of life by holding on to love, hope, and purpose. Imagine hearing Viktor speak in a theater. His words paint the camp in gray misery and then lift you into a dawn of hope. His story is cinematic in its contrast, like watching a man climb out of a pit and turn around to offer his hand to others still trapped below. In Viktor's story, we see that meaning is not something far away, but something we carry inside us. His journey is not just history. It's a life lesson for all of us. In the end, Viktor Frankl's journey demonstrates one final truth. The ultimate freedom is inside us. Even when life seems most meaningless, that is the very moment to search for meaning. It may be closer than we think. His voice in the darkness whispers that as long as we have life, we have the power to choose how we live it. And so Viktor Frankl's story leaves us with hope and a challenge. When life tests us, look within and ask, what does life want from me here? The answer may guide us through our own darkest nights, lighting a path toward meaning and dignity that cannot be taken away.